Hello, this is Chaplain Paul, and today I'm just going to ask our elected officials some questions. And anybody that watches this video will know what questions to ask our elected officials because a lot of people don't know what to do. They don't know who to call. They think it's a waste of time. This video hopefully will give some nuts and bolts questions that need to be answered concerning long-term care in Arizona. And my hopes are that my elected officials will begin to address these issues and answer these questions and move uh, in a timely manner to improve the safety and quality of care for thousands and thousands of long term care patients who are suffering dearly, many of them all alone. Uh, the first question is: how is it with headlines like this? This whole system has failed. Graphic stories of patients being raped and beaten to death by staff and other patients. Graphic stories of patients being treated inhumanely. Graphic stories of patients' civil rights, patients' rights, human rights, and constitutional rights being violated. And a series of stories that the Arizona Republic did. How is it with front page uh, story like this that there's not been not one long-term care bill sent to the governor's desk last session or yet this session. There are three that are now in the Senate, two by Representative Dunn and one by Representative Wynn, that I support. Um, how is that? How is that with things so bad that there's not one Arizona long-term care bill that's been sent to the governor? Sent, there's not one that's been passed. How is that possible? I'd like to know why that is. Uh, I've been saying it like a broken record. Any other crisis would be top priority. Patients raped and beaten to death by staff and other patients. The security in these places is a joke. Okay, patients. Uh, if you have a roommate that is dangerous, okay, there's really nothing to prevent that person if they're able to get out of bed to make the other patient's life a living hell in a variety of ways. Um, So that's the first question. The second question is, how come Arizona Health Services is not being held accountable? Again, the Audit General's 2002 audit of health services revealed that of hundreds and hundreds of very serious complaints of sexual and physical abuse committed against Arizona long-term care patients that were downgraded, dismissed without any investigation. How is that possible? That means there's a high probability that the staff are still working in these facilities that those complaints were filed against. The interim director at one of the hearings, there was two hearings, one on July 15th, no, no, June 15th, 2022, and July 14th, 2022. I spoke at the one July 14th, 2022, where the interim director of health services spoke at the um, ad hoc committee of abuse, neglect, and mistreatment of vulnerable adults in Arizona long-term care, chaired by Representative Longden. I spoke at that hearing. The interim director said, "Well, people they wait until their loved one dies and then they file a complaint. And they're upset and they're emotional, and it is true that they'll wait until the patient either passes away or goes home or goes to another facility because they don't want reprisal. But the fact is that hundreds and hundreds of very serious complaints were downgraded, dismissed without any investigation is a disgrace. Not only that, there's been no accountability, none, zero, zero accountability whatsoever. Um, how is it that there's only one inspection a year? There used to be four, and now there's one. One inspection a year, and the places are tipped off. The long-term care licensing department will say, "Oh no, no, they're not tipped off." I'm telling you, they're tipped off because the staff at the facility where me and Pastor Ken go, we were told on several occasions not to come in when state is doing their survey because they come in for a week and do a survey. And we were told not to come in because they don't want to risk us saying anything negative to the surveyors. So yes, they know. Okay, they're tipped off. They get everything all nice and looking, you know, running efficiently. They have extra people come in when the surveyors are there. The charge nurse, the CNA, the charge nurse, and the nurses are actually helping the CNAs change patients. Whereas when state's not there, they don't do it. They're very reluctant to help the CNAs change patients unless you have a really good, committed, caring, compassionate nurse that does their job and actually puts the safety and well-being of the patients first and actually helps the CNAs when there's a shortage of CNAs. How is it that there's no staff to patient ratio in our state that's enforced? The staff to patient ratio should be set at uh, 2 RNs and 4 CNAs per 30 to 35 patients. Heavily enforced. You get 3 warnings, okay? 3 warnings, and then you get shut down. That's it. The first warning comes with a fine. The second warning comes with a bigger fine. The third warning comes with even a bigger fine, and then you're shut down. How is it that that's not being addressed? The statute was changed. The statute, the long-term care statute was changed, so now long-term care patients are no longer, I mean, long-term care lawsuits are no longer being awarded attorney's fees. It took me a year to find out what was going on here. Patients waiting all night long to be changed, and they develop symptoms like E. coli, MRSA, bed sores, rashes, infections, blisters, and other serious infections that sometimes land them in ICU and in the grave, but yet you can't sue for basic forms of neglect, mistreatment, and abuse if they treat it and they heal it like a bed sore. Well, they got a bed sore because the patient isn't turned, okay, in a timely manner. And so the patient suffers, but then they treat it and the bed sore is healed. You could still sue. That's a form of neglect. And back in the day, you could do that. You sue, you get awarded 10 or 20 grand plus attorney's fees could be 30, $40,000. Well, somebody in the legislature, somebody in the state government of Arizona changed that statute. So now Arizona long-term care uh, lawsuits are no longer being awarded attorney's fees. So now you've taken basic neglect, abuse, and mistreatment right out of the equation. Attorneys are not going to take the case. It's near impossible to find an attorney, okay, for abuse in Arizona. It's very difficult. I've tried on behalf of patients. It's very difficult. Um, there was a patient. Her name was Sarah. She had she needed to have she had a hernia that was very painful. She went over to the hospital next door, and she was paralyzed from the waist down. She was kind of scrunched down in the bed like that. Well, the nurse came in with somebody else, and they got her underneath the arms, and they got her a hold of her legs, and they pulled her in 2 different directions. They broke vertebrae in her back. 3 vertebrae were broken in her back. Okay, this is in a hospital. This is about maybe 10 years ago. Okay, and you would think the hospital would have treated her and help this woman. Well, what they did was they sent her back to the facility where me and Pastor Ken serve to cover it up, to make it look like it happened at our facility. Not only that, she complained. She was in pain and she wanted a CAT scan, and they wouldn't give her a CAT scan. As a matter of fact, I talked to a social worker. The social worker said to me, "Well, Sarah cries wolf, and we can't give a CAT scan every time a patient wants a CAT scan." She wound up in a hospital to be operated on her hernia, and the surgeon was in the room, and I was there. I was standing by her side, and standing by Sierra's side. I mean, not Sierra, Sarah's side. And uh, Sarah said, "I can't breathe because of my hernia." And the surgeon said, "Oh, no, it's not because of your hernia. It's because they broke your vertebrae in 3 places." And I damn near hyperventilated. I could not believe that this could happen in a hospital. and in a medical rehab. But it's happening, okay? Things like this, these atrocities are happening every single day. I'd like to know why there's not more of an effort to protect their constitutional rights, their patients' rights, their human rights, and their civil rights in these facilities. I'd like to know why there's no state officials going in nights and weekends when there's less staff. There's less staff nights and weekends so that the facility can make more money. They have the staff, they just have less nights and weekends. Less staff means longer wait time. Instead of having 4 CNAs, now there's 2 for 60 patients. Patients that are coma, semi-coma, most likely are not getting changed all night long. I've talked to patients that had to wait all night long to be changed. Patients going into hyperthermia because they're in their pee-soaked bed all night long. Uh, you know, this is inhumane treatment. You say, well, then if it's so bad, take your family member out. Well, I'm sorry, not everybody has, the type of money to have a ventilator, a breathing machine, have dialysis, have all of the things necessary at home. If you have to have dialysis 3 times a week, that's a big haul, especially if you're paralyzed. So a lot of people are stuck. They get in an accident, they have a stroke, a heart attack, or other kidney failure, renal failure, and they're on life support. And being at home is not an option, especially if you have a trach. The trach has to be cleaned, changed. The dressing has to be cleaned. If you don't do that, it could get infected. Okay, your throat could close up. So again, no state officials are going in nights and weekends. It's a free for all. There's no chaplains in these facilities. It's required in hospitals and in prisons, but not in long-term care facilities. Are you kidding? Where people are sick and suffering and dying? Okay, so why can't we expand that rule to include long-term care facilities? If they're required in prisons and in hospitals, look at that rule or law, whatever it is, and just add long-term care. Just add it to it, whatever the statute is. The food is unprocessed, it's processed unhealthy food, most of it. They do have vegetables and salads and different things, fruits and things. But the fact is that most of the food is just very cheap processed food. That has effect on your mental health, your spiritual health, your emotional health, and your physical health. It slows your ability to heal. When you're eating heavy processed foods, you become slothish. Okay, you become uh, it makes you uh, not want to be active. Right, that's a fact. I just found out recently that these facilities are not testing people for diabetes. One of the patients that I'm very fond of, Joanna, okay, she's home now with her sister, uh, but the other day her sister came to check on her in the morning, and she was unresponsive. She was unresponsive and had to go to the hospital and is now in ICU. She's in ICU, and I visited her yesterday. She's in ICU because these facilities don't check on a regular basis for diabetes. You know, if you have diabetes, that's one thing. If you go in and you say my mom is pre-diabetic, that they'll check, okay? But if you go in and and you've never had diabetes, you're not pre-diabetic, they don't check you unless you ask. So now you're in the bed, you're inactive, you're eating unhealthy food, you have a high probability of developing diabetes if you're in one of these places for a long period of time. If you don't ask to be checked, checked on a daily basis, or not a daily, a weekly basis, or a couple of times a week, be checked with AccuCheck. It's a little thing that pricks your finger and the blood reads your blood sugar. Then you develop diabetes. You could go into a diabetic coma. This is what happened to Joanna. She went into a diabetic coma because the facility wasn't checking to make sure if she was developing diabetes. I mean, come on, guys. What are we running here? It's a joke. Okay, uh, it's an absolute joke. And our elected officials, it's your responsibility to have public hearings that bring in these owners and staff and patients by Zoom and family members by Zoom if necessary, volunteers, chaplains, and have hearings and collect information, and then use that information to craft good bipartisan long-term care legislation that's going to greatly improve the safety and quality of care for the patients. That's not happening. I invite you to go to Coronado on South the Cactus on 19th Avenue. Go to North Mountain. Okay, go to Desert Haven, Desert Terrace, any life care facilities. Go to Camelback Rehab. Go to any low income, middle class, long term care facility. Look around, check it out. And remember, Jesus loves you, and so do I.